He used to call me legacy overhead. I was updating a compliance audit sheet when the video screen flickered on and there he was. Matt. Maybe 30, confident in that loud, polished way that tries a little too hard. The CFO introduced him as the efficiency fixer, which everyone knows means he was brought in to cut costs and people while smiling about it. Perfect tan, bright teeth, sharp haircut, like he studied a checklist on how to look in charge. Hi everyone, he said smoothly. I'm here to streamline operations and eliminate redundancies. His eyes paused on me through the screen like he was already deciding what to remove. I didn't react. I calmly saved a copy of every licensing file tied to my name, federal renewals, compliance chains, certifications, and labeled the folder something harmless before backing it up to a private drive. I've been in this business too long to be careless. By lunch, I overheard him joking in the break room about outdated infrastructure. I'm 42, hardly outdated, but in his world if you're not chasing trends you're disposable. Later, during an open floor meeting, he presented a slide deck full of buzzwords: agile compliance ecosystems, decentralized accountability, phrases that sounded impressive but said very little. A few interns nodded eagerly. Then he said, some team members with legacy responsibilities will be reassessed for alignment. He looked directly at me. We appreciate your historical contributions, Dana. Historical, like I belonged in an archive. I just smiled. The calm smile of someone who knows more than she's saying. That night I stayed late on purpose. I logged into 3 federal systems and confirmed every credential was active and fully tied to my name. Then I printed the clause in my contract most people ignore. Section 7C. If I'm terminated, all company-paid licensing and regulatory certifications tied to me become void within 48 hours. I made sure everything was current, timestamps clean and accurate. No one paid attention when I left, but I noticed the way Matt watched me earlier, confident he had control. He had no idea how much of the company's compliance structure ran through me. Sometimes people underestimate the quiet ones. And sometimes that's a mistake they only realize too late. By the following Tuesday, Matt had taped a poster above the copier that read, "Compliance is not equal to complacency." It was printed in Comic Sans, which told me everything I needed to know. Then came his big announcement. Everyone had to re-interview for their evolved roles. He framed it like an exciting reset, as if we should feel lucky to compete for the same jobs we already had. One by one, employees walked into conference rooms looking nervous. The newer hires came out energized, repeating lines like, "He really sees potential," and "He's bringing fresh energy." I kept my thoughts to myself. When it was my turn, I didn't carry a resume. I carried calm. Matt barely glanced up. "Dana, you've been here a while." 10 years, I replied evenly. He nodded and pulled up a draft org chart. Under regulatory stewardship, my name was crossed out, replaced with, "to be reassigned." Then he clicked another file, Q3 License Renewal Plan V1. In the comments it said, "Can this be transferred downstream?" I knew what that meant, hand it to someone inexperienced. I stayed composed, but mentally I took note. Back at my desk, I opened the compliance database I had built from scratch years ago. It tracked 43 active licenses, expiration dates, governing agencies, signature authorities. Every single one tied to my credentials. I exported an updated copy, encrypted it, renamed it something harmless, and sent it to a secure private account. Then I cleaned up the access trail. Experience teaches you to prepare quietly. That afternoon, Matt reassigned inspection prep to a marketing intern who genuinely asked whether FDA meant redesigning cafeteria posters. Meanwhile, he assigned me to reorganize janitorial supplies, calling it staying connected at a foundational level. I politely asked whether I still had admin access to the licensing dashboard. He blinked and said it had been reassigned to Chloe, who had just recently learned basic document management. I nodded, walked to another terminal, and quietly revoked her permissions through a secondary admin layer I had set up years ago. If I was being pushed aside, I wasn't leaving the structure unsecured. Later, as I passed his glass office, I heard him laughing about clearing out the old wood. He didn't notice me, but I noticed the shift in tone around the office. Not long after, I overheard a few junior analysts mocking my old compliance flowchart, joking about the color coding and manual timestamps. They didn't realize those details were the reason the company had passed every audit for nearly a decade. Sometimes experience looks simple, until it's gone. They used to gather by the break room asking if I'd ever heard of automation, tossing around trendy terms like agile iteration and machine learning integration, as if buzzwords could pass a federal audit. They stood there with iced coffee and oversized confidence, critiquing systems they had never built. I walked by without reacting, but I felt it. By midweek I was locked out of 3 internal dashboards. 2 I had personally created. No notice, just a red error screen telling me to contact the system administrator. The irony? That had been me. I sent emails. Nothing. I called HR and reached a voicemail that felt colder than winter. When I finally spoke to someone, they told me all requests now had to go through my department manager, Matt. Of course. Within days I had been cut off from every meaningful system I once managed. No explanation, just talk of streamlining. Matt had a careful way of dismantling things, never bold enough to build, but skilled at wrapping damage in polished memos. His leadership updates mentioned legacy processes under review, staffing overlaps, and my favorite, redundant certification management. As if a federally required licensing authority tied to my verified credentials could simply be duplicated. I was still employed on paper but functionally erased. That's when I booked a quiet appointment at a small notary office above a nail salon. I filled out a voluntary relinquishment of licensing authority form. I didn't sign it, I just had the option notarized. A quiet backup plan. Afterward, I returned to work with a polite smile and a peppermint latte. Matt passed me and asked if I felt more aligned. I told him I was just wrapping up loose ends. He smiled in that polished corporate way that never reaches the eyes. What he didn't realize was that every loose end I handled came with consequences attached. The turning point came on a Monday, the kind where the office air feels heavy and forced optimism hangs everywhere. We were gathered for Matt's new weekly meeting, his version of motivational leadership. He stood in front of us, hands out, voice steady, talking about candor and reflection. Whenever someone leads with candor, you know something unpleasant is coming. He spoke about honoring tradition while warning against stagnation, pacing like a keynote speaker. Then he stopped directly behind my chair and said clearly that certain legacy roles no longer aligned with the company's forward direction. The room went quiet. Chairs shifted. Eyes lowered. A few people looked at me, but no one said a word. One young analyst even tried to smile, as if this was routine, like someone had just lost a parking space instead of their job. Then Matt delivered it plainly. Effective immediately, Dana Miller's role was eliminated. No warning, no private discussion, just a public announcement dropped into the room. I stood up calmly, steady and clear-headed. 2 HR reps approached, clutching a glossy folder like it carried something important. Inside was a termination form. No severance offered, just formal language and a signature line. I signed it smoothly and asked for a printed copy. Matt said everything was digital. I repeated, printed. After a brief pause, they handed it over. I left the building composed, fully aware of what that signature triggered. Section 7C of my contract quietly activated the moment I signed. Every active certification issued under my authority, licenses the company relied on, was automatically set for revocation. Not paused. Not pending. Revoked. That evening, confirmation arrived. My authority over multiple federal licenses had been formally relinquished. Any operations tied to those credentials would be marked non-compliant within 24 hours unless reassigned to a properly certified replacement. I didn't respond. I didn't warn anyone. I went home, poured a modest glass of wine, watched old sitcom reruns and slept peacefully. By Wednesday morning, reality arrived at the office. Procurement attempted to finalize a shipment of regulated biotech materials and received a blunt response. The receiving entity was inactive due to an expired license. Systems began failing. Automated reports to federal audit portals were rejected. Internal dashboards that once showed everything in good standing turned red with compliance alerts. Credentials were flagged as unassigned. Matt walked into operations holding his coffee, suggesting they simply update the contact information. A compliance analyst carefully explained that certification authority couldn't just be edited. It required federally recognized reauthorization. I had been the sole credentialed officer across all regulated divisions. No one else was registered. The reapproval process would take weeks. That's when the room fell silent. Not confused, not embarrassed, just quiet with the weight of understanding. Some mistakes don't announce themselves loudly. They unfold in slow, undeniable facts. Matt pressed his fingers to his temples and snapped, asking why no one had warned him. Renee, young but steady, answered that I had been the one keeping everyone informed all along. At home, I was relaxed in sweatpants, eating a simple bowl of cereal and quietly reading an email thread a former coworker had forwarded to me. Someone even shared a screenshot of Matt messaging legal, asking how to override a license expiry tag in the dashboard thingy. He actually called it a thingy. That thingy was a system I had built over 5 years to be secure and precise. If anyone without proper clearance tried to access a certification, it automatically blocked their IP and logged the attempt for internal audit review, which as it turned out had already flagged Matt's failed login attempts. By midday, upper management was scrambling. Messages flew around asking if they could bring me back, whether my non-disclosure agreement blocked communication, and who approved my termination. No one had clear answers. Meanwhile, I was deciding between soup or wings for lunch and enjoying the quiet. Later that evening, I checked the company's public page online. It still proudly claimed full federal certification across all operations. I knew that statement wouldn't hold for long. Friday morning delivered the real shock. A scheduled federal inspection notice set for 10 a.m. These reviews were technically random, but always within a known window I had carefully prepared for every year. By 9:22, the front desk alerted compliance that inspectors had arrived asking for the active license holder. There wasn't one. Matt, now visibly stressed, rushed to legal asking if my credentials could be restored. A junior associate began searching online for reinstatement procedures. Attempts to log into the federal credentialing portal using my old details failed. A password reset request returned user not found. When Matt finally reached the regulatory board, he was informed calmly that I had voluntarily relinquished my authority and my registration had been removed. Reinstatement would require full recertification, a process averaging 4 to 6 weeks. He stared at the speakerphone in disbelief. HR flipped through my exit file, confused, saying they had processed only standard paperwork and knew nothing about certification triggers. Then someone from audit asked the question that changed the tone in the room. Didn't she negotiate a special clause in her employment contract? That was the moment it hit them. Dana Miller wasn't just another long-time employee quietly managing paperwork. She was the structural support holding everything together, and they had pulled her out without understanding what she carried. Across town, Dana's phone rang. It was Liz from documentation, her voice shaky and unsure. Liz had always been kind, the type who brought snacks during audit week and left friendly notes on Dana's desk. "Did you do this?" she asked softly. Dana paused, stirred her coffee and looked out the window before answering calmly. "No. You did." She didn't raise her voice or hang up in anger. This wasn't about revenge. It was cause and effect. They made a decision and now the results were unfolding. The federal auditors were already waiting in the lobby, but without a licensed compliance officer present, the inspection legally couldn't proceed. That delay alone would trigger contract violations with vendors and clients within hours. While the company scrambled, Dana sat at a nail salon getting a deep burgundy gel polish, relaxed and unbothered. She wasn't making noise. She didn't need to. The impact spoke for itself. By Monday morning, the office atmosphere had changed completely. The CEO, Gregory T. Winslow, returned from vacation expecting business as usual. Instead, he walked into tension thick enough to feel. His inbox was flooded with urgent compliance alerts and messages from legal warning of a serious regulatory issue. At 9:02 a.m., he stepped into operations and saw the damage. Halted shipments, failed inspections, inactive certifications, angry clients, and a revenue dashboard barely moving. He asked who was responsible. Every eye turned to Matt. Gregory pulled up Dana's termination file and read it carefully. After a long silence, he said quietly, "You fired the license holder." Matt tried to explain that her role had seemed redundant. Gregory gave a short, disbelieving laugh and repeated, more firmly this time, "You terminated the only person with federal licensing authority across every department." The weight of that reality settled over the room, and for the first time, no one had a quick solution. Gregory flipped open the folder legal had rushed in. "Her name is on every regulatory document," he said, voice tight. Every active license, every renewal pathway, every compliance chain this company relies on. He dropped a stack of papers onto the table. Top vendors suspended, contracts frozen due to expired credentials. Dana Miller's name appeared on every single page. He turned sharply toward the room. And you let someone who barely understands the system terminate her? Matt attempted one last defense, mumbling that he believed the authority could simply be reassigned and contact details updated. Gregory cut him off. This is a federal license, not an email setting. The room went silent. HR admitted they had tried contacting Dana but received no response. Gregory sat down slowly, the weight of it all settling in. Get her back, he said flatly. Matt hesitated, suggesting she might refuse. Gregory's stare made it clear that refusal wasn't an acceptable outcome. Then we make it worth her time. But even he understood the reality. They had pushed out the one person who held the operational backbone of the company. By noon, Dana's inbox filled with urgent messages marked high priority and a voicemail from an anxious assistant requesting immediate contact at the CEO's direction. She didn't rush to respond. She finished her breakfast, enjoying the quiet while the leadership team scrambled under fluorescent lights. Back at the office, Matt's authority had quietly evaporated. His title was reduced, his workspace downgraded, and his influence effectively removed. Legal quickly drafted a proposal to bring Dana back. A 6-month consulting contract, immediate start, structured bonuses, and strict confidentiality terms. The email praised her critical contributions and spoke of restoring operational stability, carefully avoiding any direct apology. Dana read it twice. The language was polished, but the desperation showed through. Calmly, without emotion, she began drafting her reply. *** subject. Return requested by CO Directive *** Gregory, I appreciate the offer. Truly. However, I don't return to situations where my removal was treated as a strategy. As requested, attached is a highlighted copy of my signed termination clause, Section 7C, along with formal confirmation of license revocation from the National Registry Board. I've also included a screenshot of your company's certification dashboard taken 72 hours after my departure. You'll notice my name's still listed, grayed out, but central to every credential that mattered. Wishing you clarity and full compliance moving forward. Dana Miller. There were no threats, no emotional language, just documentation. She hit send and felt a clean sense of closure, like locking a door she had built herself. Gregory read the message without speaking. The screenshot on his screen said more than any argument could. In that moment he understood they hadn't just dismissed a manager. They had removed the one person who fully understood the regulatory framework holding everything together. Weeks later, Dana reappeared publicly with a quiet announcement. She had joined Stratex BioCore as Director of Compliance Strategy. Her message was brief and professional, expressing appreciation for joining a team that values integrity and operational discipline. Soon after, industry news confirmed that Stratex secured 2 major contracts, Omega Med and Viarc, citing confidence in compliance leadership as a deciding factor. Those same clients had recently stepped away from Dana's former employer after certification delays created uncertainty. At Stratex, Dana didn't need to oversell her value. Her knowledge, reputation, and proven record spoke clearly. Meanwhile, her previous company continued struggling with license reinstatements, regulatory appeals, vendor withdrawals, and mounting penalties. Budgets tightened. Leadership shifted. Matt quietly exited after a brief transition call, his ambitious tone replaced by a simplified resume. In her new office, glass walls, steady systems, and a calm routine, Dana monitored industry updates with quiet focus. Alerts about her former company's ongoing compliance issues appeared regularly. She would take a sip of her coffee, steady and composed, reminded of one simple truth. Above her desk sat a small note with 5 words written clearly. In case they forget, I was the license.